Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. And if you're watching live, we are streaming to Facebook and YouTube as usual. Today I have my good Airbnb friend Austin, all the way from Texas. I met a lot of people in this 24-hour Airbnb marathon, and depending on when you listen to this on the podcast, we might have already done the next one, but we are setting ourselves up for another one. So Austin, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, Mr. Luke. Thank you for having me on. And so everybody knows I'm going to be airing this on my podcast called Construct Your Life for your episode as well. So this will be a nice conversation that everybody can share in.
Dual podcasting. That's, time efficiency.
Yeah, I like this. I might have to steal this from you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's such a good idea because you do tend to do a lot of podcast swaps. So it's just easier to record one and then post it across both. But so briefly off air, we were talking about, I guess, the usual lockdown COVID word. How you say, obviously, Texas doesn't really live by those rules. But are most of your Airbnbs in Texas?
It's interesting. I sold one in February. I looked like Nostradamus. I sold one that I owned with my ex-father-in-law, and we had a lot of equity in it, and we had a good 2 years, and we felt the market was hot, so we sold it. And when COVID happened, I had a client sell 3 or 4 houses that we were managing, and I had 2 of my clients that had to move back into their properties. So it was like a boom, boom, boom. And then we sat back and we decided that we were going to focus more on large scale properties, luxury properties. Mm-hmm. And we just had a client close on 3 pieces of land up in Montana. So a big project, it's going to be a total of like 4 or 5 homes when it's all said and done. So we've kind of, to be honest with you, it kind of caught us at a great time. We were about to scale up right at mid-March, and we just said, well, maybe we're not gonna do that, because you may or not know, I had a previous business a year before that where we had 27 properties in 7 states. So yeah, that was a little crazy. So
yeah. And how did you find managing cross-state?
Everybody told us not to do it, and we told them, screw you. And we learned our lesson in a lot of ways. Economies of scale is really where it's at. It's very hard to find one cleaner to do one property. But if you have, let's say, 5 or 6 properties in one area, then I can see the need for it. So moving forward, we would only take on a project in a sub-market that we're not in if we can get 5 houses or 5 units.
Yeah. Like clusters of stuff. It's we're kind of venturing down similar sort of path. We are pushing nationwide now, and it's probably a bit easier because I guess the UK probably is the size of one state over there. So when we're talking nationally, it's probably like you just operating in Texas. But I obviously have my gig out in Dubai as well, so we're looking to we manage that from the UK, and we're going to scale that over there. Obviously, we've got people on the ground over there. But yeah, I think if you get clusters, then you can motivate a cleaner, you can get your maintenance team, and everything kind of just, smoothly falls into place. And then you get the economies of scale on the services as well. But we are, so it's like, everyone says to me, you don't do things in halves. And so I've always been doing like little single, lets and, bigger sort of 4 or 5 bed houses, refurbs, extensions, things like that. And then I thought this is the year where we kind of try and acquire some blocks of stuff, because the blocks of flats do really well for us. So I went out and, started searching, and then I get 2 opportunities in a week close, as you do. I don't just want to test the water with one, and one of them is a monster of a project. So we're still waiting for the architect drawings, which hopefully I'll get later today. But one's hopefully going to be 5 stories and 20 flats, so like a proper job. And the other one is sorry.
New construction or previous?
So this is this one's to a commercial building into 5 stories, and then the other one's 2 houses knocking that. I was hoping for 7 or 8 flats, but we're only going to get 5. But I think the mix of 5 is going to be great. So this leads me on to my sort of point of what my intention is to then have, a cleaning team and a linen storage in those centers, and then they just manage those centers. That's all they take care of, and then the other ones will just manage the other block. And then, the clusters of stuff, we already do that with our cleaning team, where we kind of say, right, you're in charge of that cluster of properties, you're in charge of that cluster of properties. And I think it's important to keep yourself organized and be able to scale, because there's no point in scaling if you can't keep it all together.
Well, I think that's the rub, right? Is that the people, they're like, well, I'm going to scale. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to scale when you're ready. Like when your team is dialed in, and I read something this morning. I've been studying behavioral investing because I love psychology. He said, too many of you think you're special, and that's why you lose money. And I thought it was so great, because ultimately the vehicle, the cleaner, the linen, and the property are the star of the show. The moment that you make yourself the star of the show is the moment you get caught out with your ego.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, cleaners go from, in this game, as you say, cleaners are probably the most important piece of the puzzle, whereas in most businesses, cleaners are probably the least important piece of the puzzle. So, they get like a job promotion instantly by working with Airbnb hosts. And, and I think they enjoy it a lot more, because they go from that point of maybe feeling like they're not included in a team to being really included in a team, and, being relied upon, and, taking on responsibility. And so many good people come out of that as well. And I think cleaning a residential home is so different to cleaning a Airbnb unit. I mean, when you are recruiting cleaners, and you see this mistake all the time when people first get into the game, they just put a job ad out, cleaner needed, and your residential cleaner, well, they shouldn't be emptying your fridge, checking for hairs in your bed, cleaning your cupboards out, that sort of thing. But this is what these cleaners have to do. So if they're not used to it, they just come in, do the usual mop, clean, wipe, hoover, and then leave. And it's like, oh, next guest has found some items under the bed, that shouldn't be there. Or, we've had a kid before find a lighter under a couch, a little baby as he's crawling around. You're just like, oh my God, but this stuff happens if you don't recruit the right people.
So we did a mastermind on Saturday that I put on, and the Airbnb, I did the Airbnb talk because the guy I brought got sick, so he couldn't show up. And I told these 2 guys that had new Airbnbs, I said, let me explain something to you. I don't know why they're detectives. I don't know where they got trained by the FBI, but your guest will find anything that you leave behind. Dude, I lived in my house for 2 years, turned it into an Airbnb. I would get text about stuff I didn't even know that was in the house.
Yeah. Any cash?
No cash. They definitely didn't text that. But, I'm interested because I heard a little bit about your story. So how many current properties do you manage?
We've got over 100 now, and we're scaling quite quickly. So my intention is to acquire at least 15 per month this year. And also that doesn't include the Dubai gig. I want 25, 30 over there by the end of the year. So we're in like full scale mode, and I've got acquisition executives actually employed in the business, just going after, managed and rented business. And then I've got my deal sources in the business as well, who go after like purchasing. So we're purchasing hard as well. So I think it's a great model that you can build your cash flow using someone else's property, which is a huge win for them, by the way. There's a great relationship there. It's a pure win-win. And I don't want people to confuse that and think, oh, well, you're just using someone else's property and they get no benefit out of it, because they 100% get a benefit out of it, probably more so than you. You use the cash flow, and then if you're clever with it, you buy your own assets. And then you've got that foundation to then fuel it. And my owned properties that I run on Airbnb, they are the most profitable line in my business, because the uplift from the mortgage to what we're generating as a gross revenue is huge, compared to obviously a higher rent to the revenue that comes in. So, I mean, the rent to rent still works well. We still get great margins.
So you're running if I'm saying you're running like 3 different models of Airbnb.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you leasing any and turning those, or is it all managed?
Yeah.
So
No. Yeah. Lease. Yeah. So we call it rent to rent. I believe you guys call it rental arbitrage. So we rent, we will straight manage, and then I obviously own my own and run them on Airbnb as well.
So where did you, what model did you get started on?
So I had an owned property that I couldn't get rented, and I'd refurbed it, and I'd spent far too much on it. And I was like, why is no one renting this property? It's beautiful. I've just done it out. It's in city center. It's perfect location. And then I sat down with my friend, and I was like, I'm really frustrated. I've had about 7 or 8 potential tenants come through this property, and they just won't take it. I've had no offers. I've had nothing. And that was unusual. So he was like, oh, well, I do this thing called Airbnb. I was like, what's Airbnb? And he's like, told me about it. I left that coffee. I went straight to IKEA, bought a load of furniture, put the furniture in. I think it cost me about £1,500 for furniture, put the furniture in, took a few photographs. And then, honestly, you can ask my wife this. I was like sat on the couch, and it was like the bookings just came in as soon as I'd listed. I was like, Jesus. And then I hadn't even got the cleaning team or anything organized at this point. So I then got another booking. And then over the next 5 days, I generated £3,500 worth of bookings for this property. And I was just like, my mind was blowing. And my wife was like, is this real? Like, is it a scam? Is it legit? And then I was just hooked, I was hooked. And then I had a couple more properties. So I turned them straight into the Airbnb units. And then I fell into the rental arbitrage model by accident, because I noticed there was the same company coming back week after week, but they kept booking via booking.com. So I rang them up, and I was like, is there any chance you can book direct with me so I can save on the commission, and I'll give you a bit of a discount? And they were like, oh, yeah. And I got talking to this lady, and she was like, I was like, how long are you in the area for? And she was like, oh, like the next 8 months. And there's also I think there's something like another 16 guys that we need to house. And I was like, and she was like, do you have accommodation? I was just like, yeah, I've got accommodation. So I then basically had a problem to solve. So she gave me the numbers, what they were willing to pay. And I just started ringing everybody I know. I was like, I need your property. They were like, why? I was like, I've got these contractors, and I need to just put them in. It's for 8 months, and I'll do you a deal. And then most of the people I was ringing were quite receptive to it. So I then, I acquired, I think it was about 5 properties in the next 10 days, got them quickly set up, got that contract secured. And from that, I realized there was this thing called rent to rent. Someone actually said to me, that's rent to rent. And I Googled it, and I was like, oh yeah, that is rent to rent. And then I just, as you know, if you do it right, it works. So I just then continued, pushing that model hard.
Well, what interests me about that story, besides the fact that it's absolutely amazing, and something I'm learning about marketing and just kind of digital, the way the businesses are going, you had actual tangible numbers, right? Meaning like you had an actual person willing to commit to you. So you went out and filled their need. You didn't just go get 16 properties and hope people booked it. So in essence, you had kind of like a sure thing. You just had to figure out a way to fix it.
Yeah, I think when you speak to most people that get into this game, I think they just solved a problem, and, I had, who was I speaking to the other day? Anyway, she basically needed a property for her parents to stay whilst she had a young child, but she didn't want them in the house. So she thought, I'll rent somewhere and I'll put it on Airbnb to cover the gap days when the parents aren't there. She started making a fortune from the gap days. So she was like, oh, I think I'll get another one of these, and then just kind of built on that. So I think everyone kind of starts this business with solving a problem as such. I think probably a bit more now people are going, okay, that's working for them. I'll get coached by them and I'll go straight into it that way. And that's fine as well, because then you're getting into it the right way with the right help. But for the ones like us who kind of just stumbled across it by accident, it was more than likely because you were solving a problem, So my initial problem was I couldn't get a property rented.
That was me too. My wife at the time was living in a different city, and I had this apartment sitting there that was not being used during the weekends, and I just started renting it out on the weekends. That's how I got started.
Yeah.
It was a 100. I was 300 square feet. It was like a little apartment in Austin. And I was like, dude, this is amazing. And then we went to the house we bought and started with an air mattress. And the air mattress turned into a full bed. And then the full bed turned into the house. And the house turned into 3 houses. And that's how it happened. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the main thing that I take away from it, especially when I, speak to like-minded people like yourselves and, the network we've got behind the scenes in our Instagram group and, just other Airbnb hosts around the world that I've connected with, especially over the last 6 months or so, is like everyone does so well out of it that do it properly, and even through what was a very bumpy ride last year, everybody seems to have adapted, figured it out, found another way to bring money into the properties and still make them work. And there's been some ones that have sort of said, okay, I've actually realized that model doesn't quite work. Mm-hmm. Maybe I need to offload a bit of that, but I'll get a bit more of that, and they've kind of stuck with it. And I think those that are still in the game right now are going to really see some rewards from it over the next few years.
Well, it's funny that you say that. To hammer on that point on an overall life scale, don't you think that's in life in general? If you stick with something, there's always going to be peaks or valleys health wise. I didn't lose 65 pounds in a week. I lost it in 2 years. Like I didn't get sober from alcohol after 20 years in one day. I did it, 2 years counting now. You have to understand. I study a lot of the Stoic philosophy and kind of, that neutral thinking. And ultimately, like if you have an idea and it works, just because the market shifts doesn't mean that idea is no longer good.
Yeah. I mean, the saying goes, you only fail when you quit, right? So you just keep plugging away at it bit by bit. And but yeah, I think it's, everyone sees the successful posts and the wins, and I do sometimes share my disappointments as well. There's no doubt that we do get bad reviews at times, and we haven't lived up to the expectations of some guests or even lived up to the expectations of some staff or and there's been shortfalls, and I think you've got to accept that. But I think what people don't see is the work that does go on behind the scenes to keep these businesses moving. And I think that is probably that's the secret, really. I think, that is the secret. It's not just about getting the property, setting it up and taking a few photos. It's like how you run it as a business behind the scenes. And I think anybody that wants to work closely with you, I think that's kind of what they're investing in. And that's the game changer for me is, what are the moving parts behind the scenes that, keep the business scaling, keep the business efficient, keep the business organized, and, and reduce all the time efficiency. I'm a massive fan now about, like, I hate wasting time. It really bothers me. Like if people send me like crap emails that just don't need to be in my inbox, and it just takes me even 10 seconds to open it and delete it, that really bothers me. It's a total waste of my time. And I get really precious over time now. But the more I think you think about things like that, the more efficient you make your business so that it gives you that more time back. And, I've been thinking about this a lot, probably since I actually connected with Julie. And when I had a conversation with her about her business and how she built it and sold it. And it makes total sense. Like if you want to build a business to sell, you have to work yourself out of the business, because you cannot, people don't buy the person at the top of the business. People buy the business and the systems that run the business. So if you've got a business that ticks without you, you've got a much more valuable asset than if you've got a business that depends on you all the time. And by just going that way, you also just create a better business with that mindset. A lot of people, though, go, oh, well, you're not working very hard today because you're not putting like 10 hours in a day. It's like, I don't need to put 10 hours in a day to like get efficiency out of my business. I can do 2 focused hours and my business will probably move a lot more than most other businesses, that are dependent on the CEO making every single decision in every single department. And so that's really got me thinking over the last few months and kind of how I'm starting to build it out even more now for the future.
Dude, it's like it's like you're in my head. This couldn't come at a better time. I just finished a book yesterday, and I'm about to finish another book. The book is amazing. It's called Built to Sell. And he goes through this whole thing. And then a book called Clockwork.
I've read Clockwork's one of my favorite books.
It is. I realize that personal vanity of wanting to be the star of the show is the reason that you are trapped in your business. Your product, your asset, your property is the star of the show. And the moment that you can empower the people around you to make the decisions and make that the star is the moment your company becomes 10 times more valuable. Just like you said, systems sell, you don't.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I used to I was the queen bee role, right? My core role is acquiring property for cash flow. That's the core business. That's the queen bee role in my business. And then anyone that's listened or read Clockwork will understand what we're talking about here. And then I realized I don't have to be the queen bee to make this business powerful. So I moved out of that role and put effectively my brother's in the queen bee role right now, and he's the one out there acquiring and bringing the property in for cash flow. I've then got a couple of other people in the business who are deal sourcing and bringing the business in, and they're protected. They don't get involved in operations. We try and keep them protected. So they are just focused on bringing more properties to the table, because the more properties we bring, the more cash flow we can bring in. I then just sit outside now and just design the business, build the brand, build the relationships, and tend to deal a lot with the finance and funding. But I quickly realized after reading Clockwork how I needed to systemize the business and have these people in their zone of geniuses, no overlap, and everybody just focuses on their core role, and then nothing else distracts them from that core role. And whilst I might have more staff because of that, each of those staff generate money into the business. So they actually self-fund themselves. So, sometimes they're like, I actually had a guy in my Instagram not so long ago. He's like, "Oh, we'll run your business. How many staff do you have?" I see there's a question on here about how many staff I actually have. But, I was like, "Oh, I've got about 35 all in all." And he's like, "Oh, I could run your business on 3 staff. You're so inefficient." And I'm like, "You don't know my business. How do you know it's inefficient? Like, how do you not know that every single one of those 35 aren't bringing in 100 grand each a year? Like, you just don't know that." So,
well, it's funny that you say that. There's a guy here in Austin. His name is David Osborne. He has 88 revenue streams. They buy 200 houses at a time. He's worth a couple $100 million. When they interview somebody for his business, he interviews them for 2 months, and he says, because I'm hiring that person to make me $1 million. If I'm not hiring to make me $1 million, then what am I doing? Yeah,
I'm going to see if but I haven't read Built to Sell, so I'm just going to see if it's on Blinkist. Oh yeah, it is. There we go.
Yeah, he has got a couple great books. Yeah, because I'm getting in a consulting role with a couple businesses, and we're starting it from day one as how do we fire ourselves, and then how do we sell this in a couple years? Like that's because like my thing, I'm a person, like I like to build things. So I want to get into something. And the reason that I had to lose money in my first Airbnb business is because I lied about the role that I actually wanted. And then I was so far out on the edge of the tree that I was lying to myself even more, and I was a fraud. And then the moment that I released that and just lost the money was the moment that I truly had self-awareness to realize this is exactly what I'm good at. Leverage out the people around me to support the things that I'm not great at. And it allows me to be me, which then in turn allows me to be the best version of myself.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I actually read, I listened to Clockwork whilst I was running an ultra marathon. So it was like 5 hours of Mike, I can't say his surname, Sarkowski or whatever he's called, just in 5 hours of him, just whilst I'm running in like -4 with 40-mile-an-hour winds up a beach, feeling so sorry for myself. But it just kept but whilst I was running, I just kept thinking, right, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And I think if it wasn't cold enough, I probably would have started doing notes on my phone, but I couldn't even feel my fingertips, so that wasn't going to work. But yeah, I've listened to that book several times, and it is a game changer. Like it is a game changer, but you've got to be able to, like anything, implement it and take the action. And that's, I think, investing in staff is a bigger leap than most people are willing to take, because most people go into this sort of scarcity mode of, oh, well, I can't really afford to pay myself, so how can I afford to pay somebody else? And it's like, well, if you're going to just have them as an employee that, you know, you don't put time and effort into, and therefore they don't bring anything into your business, then yes, there will be an expense. But if you put the time and effort into them and actually make sure that if you're paying them $2,000, they're bringing in $4,000, then that's an investment. And that is 100% how you build businesses.
And then ultimately, if you look at society, right, you know, I'm not 100% clear on the younger generation in your area, but all they want to do is learn and grow. And so if you're cultivating the learning and the growing, and you take time out of your day to check in with them besides the business, you know, how are you doing? Are we communicating properly? Do you have everything that you need, instead of just saying, oh, you don't understand, which I think a lot of people do from a business owner side, and saying no. Because for me, I live by extreme ownership. If something went wrong in the business, it's because I didn't properly communicate how I wanted it to be. And guess what? It's scary because there's a lot of ideas going on up here. And so I had to learn to slow down and really frame out exactly what I want, and make sure that whether it's a video or a screen share, showing them exactly what I want, instead of just hoping they understand what they want, because they're not in my head.
Yeah. I think, and everyone is like, we've got there's a few things I wish I'd done a lot earlier in my business, but one thing is kind of documenting and systemizing everything on a video or a Google sheet is like so powerful, and it's so easy. Like, you can get a Loom account now for like whatever, $15 a month, £10 a month, whatever it is, and you can shoot Loom videos for every little task in your business, put a title on it and store it in a folder, and then you just give your team access to that. So like, how do I set up a new channel manager? There's the videos. I don't need to sit beside you and teach you how to do it. You know, how do I set up an invoice? There's the video. You know, it's like so easy.
I tell you what we've been doing. I just did a couple the first time. So for clients like that we're managing, me and my assistant will go on a Zoom call and record the spreadsheet with the listing and our thoughts for the area. So that busy client doesn't have to wait, and we don't have to try to schedule a meeting. He can listen to it on his own time with the details, opposed to just looking at a spreadsheet. It's been a game changer.
Yeah, I use Loom all the time. Just shoot Loom videos to people all the time. Like, how do I do this? I'll just quickly shoot you a Loom, and as you say, they can watch it when they're good and ready, rather than like, should we get a Zoom call scheduled in? What's your diary like? What's my diary like? Da da da. You know, just shoot the Loom video, send it over, and then they'll ask the questions if they've still got some. You can use technology now for so many different things, and I think especially in the, you know, even in the Airbnb space, it's like so. Teaching a cleaner how to clean a property, or how to check a property, or how to use the app, or whatever it might be. And you can keep an eye on them as well. Like, we can manage remotely because we've got an app where the cleaners have to go through, I think it's 98 or 96 tasks. They have to take photographs of about 17 different items, and they've got to log maintenance issues. And then from that information, we can check they've done a good job. We can, you know, file any guest damages. We can then send any maintenance crew around. We don't have to be going near these properties.
Well, isn't that what he talks about in Clockwork, is having a metrics dashboard? And that's what people don't understand. How are you managing a property in Montana when you live in Texas? It's 5 states away. Because I have a checklist that needs to be checked with pictures. And if it's, I can look back at the end of Sunday, and if those things weren't wrong, and then you attach that to the guest reviews, you can see everything. I don't need to see a picture or touch the property.
Yeah. So, I mean, I see properties now. I don't go. So I made a decision quite a while ago. The only time I'll go near a property now is more than likely to do some sort of production or social media type stuff. But my hard and fast rule is, like, quite a while ago, I was like, whenever I sign a property off as done, then I never want to go back to that property, because I don't need to go back to that property. You know, that should then go into the operations department, and then they look after that property going forward. There's no need for the owner to be going back to the properties for any reason, really. Like, absolutely no reason at all.
So don't you think, in a different way, and maybe I'm just off base here, but that also removes yourself of attachment to anything that goes on there, so you're not creating bandwidth in your head about it, like you've signed off on it?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing worse than, you know, spending 30 grand on a refurb and then seeing a guest come in first day and turn it over. But we had one of those recently. We finished one just before New Year's Eve, and New Year's Eve, obviously, they snuck in, and you know, cigarette burns on the carpet, and all, it ripped up the bathroom floor. And, you know, it's just like, But yeah, it totally, for me, it's all a numbers game. And I think this is why people also get into the wrong, especially rental arbitrage, rent to rent deals at the beginning, is because they've got this emotional attachment to, oh, it looks great, I'm going to host and I'm going to make it beautiful and I'm going to overspend for sure. We've all done it on our first few properties, and every guest is going to be like a dream. And then
they're gonna come in, the doves are gonna fly out. You're the best person in the world, dude. The guy told me, I sent him my financial my financial breakdown of per house. And he was like, yeah, we overspent by like 12 grand on your calculations. I'm like,
I think my first ever guest, I think I left a bottle of champagne and some chocolates. It's like what? But hey, you live and learn, don't you? So, but yeah, and you end up so emotionally invested in it that you go, okay, I'll pay an extra few $100 or £500 a month rent than I should be. And then you can't get bookings, you're not making any money. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, so, but when you actually just invest based on numbers, typically on a spreadsheet, for me, it's like, does this work? Yes or no? That's it. Simple. It doesn't matter what the property looks like. Money in, money out. Does it work? Yes or no? If it says yes, right, we'll engage. If it says no, we move on to the next one and find a different property.
Well, isn't that the most important thing? I find it to be the answer I answer the most. And I'm curious, by your property standards, people always ask me, well, shouldn't I do this type of home because it's going to make more money? But I've had a 2-1 that sleeps 6, that's 800 square feet, that's outperformed 5 bedrooms. Don't you see the same thing in your business? Really, it's all about the numbers.
Yeah, and I get this question all the time, like, what's the best property? It's like, there's so many like variables in terms of, like, you could have a 3-bed property and you could have 3 double beds and a sofa bed, or you could have 6 single beds and a sofa bed, or you could have 2 doubles in a twin room. Like, there's so many combinations that you could put together from the rooms. What works the best? I don't know, in total honesty. All I know is that, there's a certain rent. You kind of do your comparisons based on what's hanging around in terms of nightly rates, and then does it drive in? What I then tend to do is I go on guest reviews. So I actually had a client last night that I found a property. I think it's great. Should we put this in? Should we put that in? Should we do this? Should we do that? I was like, listen, it looks okay on the pictures. Just start off as it is, right? Your guests will tell you what's not there or what is there, So I did this at the beginning. Like, I don't put wardrobes in any of my properties. Total waste of money. We don't need them. We just put a nice £7 little thing on the wall that pulls out and pushes back in and has some coat hangers on. Saves me like £150 a room. If guests started saying, oh, there's no wardrobes, then we'd put wardrobes in. I started taking washing machines out of our places. And then I was like, do we get any complaints for not having washing machines? No. Okay, well, why spend £300-400 on a washing machine? Because they're not even using them, and
you're spot on. Every item that you put in that property creates another way for them to complain. The less is better, right?
I was the same with like sugar and things like that. Like, oh, someone else has dipped a teaspoon in the sugar. Okay, right. So we'll get sugar sachets rather than a big bottle of sugar. We used to put all sorts in the beginning, cookies and chocolates and just like, but then I guess it also comes down to, yourself going into the luxury market. And, I know we have Bill, who obviously does incredibly well from his high end sort of stuff. I'd imagine they need to put kind of hampers and things like that in, because that's his market. And those guys are paying 25-30 grand a week, sometimes even more. Chris down in Cannes looking after all these celebs. Like, I'm sure he needs to put wardrobes in there and a few bits and bobs when they're paying like 100 grand a week for these places. So you got to understand your avatar is the key to it all. Like, who are you trying to attract? And then from that, does the property fit that avatar that you're going after? And if that's a mismatch, then it's never going to work.
100%. If you had somebody that's thinking about getting it or is a new Airbnb, what do you think on a scale, just 1 or 2 things that they need to be worried about the most? Should they buy? It's all related to the person, but what is your general answer when when people are asking you how to get into Airbnb?
Yeah, so I think for the majority of people, especially over here in the UK, as a landlord, you need 25% down plus taxes plus, everything else that goes with it. So for a lot of people, that's not accessible, and that prevents, you know, a lot of people getting into the market. Whereas with rents, like I think the cheapest rent I've ever done is £400. I think I had to buy a smart TV and some duvets, and the rest of it was pretty much there. So, you know, you can get into the rental game very cheap. What I advise, so if say someone came to me and said, I've got 60,000, what should I do with it? I would say probably put 10 or 15,000 aside for your rent to rent business and get that going, because that moves quick and you can pick up a lot of units very quick, and then put the other part of it into maybe buying an asset and then turning that money through assets over time. Because buying an asset is a lot slower process. You know, by the time you've seen it, viewed it, made an offer, got it agreed, got it all through compliance, and then you refinance it on the back end after refurb, it could be like six to seven months, you know, and that's for one unit. Well, in 6 to 7 months, we could acquire 60, 70 units on a different strategy, you know? Yeah. So it's like, but I think it's great to have, I think it's good to have both. I mean, I think no doubt you can build these management businesses up and then sell them, and that can be your way to get your meal ticket. Or you can obviously use the cash flow to buy your own assets, and then ultimately you've got that pool of money sat in a property working for you for life. So I think it's good to have a balance of both, in all honesty. But I would definitely recommend, if you want to get started quick, the rent-to-rent route, or potentially management lease options, that sort of stuff.
What is the hardest part about managing properties for other people?
So I feel like we do a really good job because we don't actually hear from the owners that much, and I think that's a good sign. I have sacked an owner before because she tried. So basically, she came to us for help. She had 2 properties, and then she started telling us how we had to order the order of the pictures had to be online, the name of the listing, and then she kept going into the property and checking on it and being like, the coaster wasn't put back in the right place, or this or that and the other. And it was like, I'd understand it if she'd given us a portfolio of like 200 properties and, you know, there was a huge financial implication. But for 2 properties, it was kind of like, you've kind of entrusted us because we're the experts, but it seems like you can't release that control. And I get that, because she was emotionally attached to these properties. It was the only 2 owned properties that she had. But eventually enough was enough. And it was like, the amount of time we're spending on you versus the reward we're getting back, unfortunately, it's not a good match for the business. So we're going to, you know, have to terminate your contract and give you the properties back. And but the rest of them are, you know, we send them the statements. If they ask us the information, we'll give them it. They've got visibility, and they, you know, as I said, we seem to do a good job for people, so they don't tend to ask for them back or seem to be picking our brains too much. You know, they just get paid each month, and everyone seems happy, which, you know, I think is a good thing.
The number one lesson I've had to teach myself in our business is, you know, we had a guy that would refresh the bookings every hour and text us. Like, and then I got him a $7,000 booking for like 18 days. And I charged like $500 for the dog fee because she had 2 dogs. She didn't care. And then the dog like peed on a rug. That was it. And he like lost his mind. And I'm like, you do understand that you just made like $7,800 in like 3 weeks, right? And we sacked him. Like, it's just not worth it. Like, I don't give a crap how much money that property's making. You are taking up more of my time. And then you have clients who don't even know what's going on. Well, they prefer to not even go what's on. They get a check in their bank account and everything's good.
Yeah, well, it's the same. I used to be in the financial advising game. So someone who would maybe invest like 10,000 into a stock, like if it goes down like 5%, they're on the phone. They're like, "Oh my God, it's gone down 5%. What are you going to do about it?" And then the guys who've got like 10 million invested, that you never hear from them. Like if the stocks could tank 20%, they're just like, yeah, whatever, you know. And some might say, "Oh, well, it's because they've got loads of money in the bank and the other person hasn't." But there's probably a reason why they've got loads of money in the bank, and that's because they're not focusing, you know, all their energy into micromanaging their assets, you know, or micromanaging their money. You know, don't employ somebody else to do it if you want to micromanage it. And that goes to the same with your team. When you're building your team, like don't invest in somebody to come on your team if you then just micromanage them so much that they're not able to flourish and bring their own part to the business, you know, because that's so ineffective.
And you're also like, I champion ideas within my team because I never want to be the guy that stifles their creativity, because then what's the point? Why are they even working there? Now we might not take the idea, but I love contrary thinking. Like, my mind is in the clouds, their mind's in reality. Like, so you have to have that mix of yin and yang, and I think it's very powerful.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't want to keep you too much longer, because I think we've had an awesome chat. But what's on the horizon for you the next few months of 2021?
So I have had this dream, and COVID kind of put a pause into it. But it's starting to get kicked back up again. I have a dream of building my own Airbnbs. It is something, I love land. I love nature. I just bought a piece of property in Colorado. We are working with some structures, and I want to start building my own luxury Airbnbs in the mountains or by a river or lake. That's the goal, is to get the first one started this summer.
I'll be your first guest. I love skiing. Love skiing.
It's the one I bought in Colorado is only a half acre, but I bought it on owner finance for $100 a month, and the taxes on the property are $50 for the year, and it only takes me $1,300 to carry it for the year. So my goal is to put 2 structures with solar power on it. It's next to the best fishing in Colorado. And I think I'm gonna smash it out of the park. So that's the goal for me.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely, that's when kind of, I think the emotional side comes in a bit. Like, I'm doing that with Dubai a bit at the minute. I'm like, I used to live there. I love the place. I'd like to go back a lot more. So I'll tell you what, I'll just set a business up out there, and then I can travel. I've got the same kind of gig with, like, skiing in the mountains. I'd like to eventually have a chalet out there, so you can then use it as Airbnb when you're not there, and then the same kind of down in Portugal as well. So they're kind of emotional investments, but at the same time that they should work as because you've already got the systems and processes, so it works. So
So to add on to that, my number one reason for getting in this business, number one, was to do international Airbnbs. My goal is to have one in Italy, one in the Greek Isles, Costa Rica, and South America. I love to travel. I went to Europe on a one-way trip 2 years ago. I might be in Italy this summer. So for me, if I could have an asset that I can own, but visit when I want to for a month or 2 at a time, because my business is from my laptop, that is the long-term goal for me, for sure.
Yeah, no, I think I totally resonate with that, and I'm the same. Like, I will not engage with a software company unless they have an app on the phone, because if I cannot run it from a phone, it's no good. And I think everyone's got to be designing their businesses like that these days, especially if you've got a product where you can literally run it from a phone. So awesome. All right, well, I've seen the comments that are coming through. There's plenty of likes and stuff as well, so everyone's loving this. If you are listening on the podcast, please don't forget to leave a review. And how can everyone hit you up? How can they connect with you?
So Austin Linney on Instagram. I answer all my DMs. Facebook, same thing. The name of the podcast that you're going to be on is called Construct Your Life Podcast. How to build a lifestyle, not a bank account.
Sounds good.
Check us out. And then Ryan, so my listeners can follow you. How do they find you?
Yeah, so most of my stuff is official Ryan Luke. I've got the Airbnb Formula Facebook group, and YouTube channel as well is the same. So, but we're everywhere, right?
This is efficient as hell. I might take this, dude. This is nice.
Just steal it. Steal the concept. It's fine. You can have it. There's no patent on it. So, listen, buddy, that's been absolutely awesome. And I know we're going to connect soon on Clubhouse with the 24-hour room. So everyone that's listening, keep an eye out on that as well. And if you're not on Clubhouse, I might actually have a few spare invites if you want to ping me a message. You've got to be on iPhone, but ping me a message. Thank you very much. Cheers, Austin.
Cheers, bud. See ya.